either win or lose. And I surround myself with people who win. I surround myself and I read. There's a term that says leaders are feeders. Which simply means if you're going to be a great leader and you're going to be a great person in life, you must feed yourself with great information. You must surround yourself with great people, because there are people in your life, or people in this profession, or people on the outside who will tell you that what you're doing doesn't work, that you're crazy for doing this. And sometimes if we subject ourselves or listen to that, we begin to believe that and we begin to doubt ourselves. We must never doubt ourselves. Mr. Wayne does it. Doubt? I don't even know if that's part of your vocabulary. I doubt it, based on how you think. Bob, last night we went out to dinner, and the thing about it is that we went out, all we talked about as we sat and had dinner, me, him, and Kevin Brown, we talked about life, and we talked about sports, and we talked about winning. We didn't talk anything about negative stuff. You know what I mean? And that's incredible. So are we focused on the problems, or are we focused on the solution? I believe that you guys are solution-oriented thinkers. You're high-level conscious thinkers, and that's what makes you guys winner. But it all deals with this concept of perception. So let me ask you a question. What is perception? What is it? Anybody? Kentucky, what's perception? Okay. Text Rennie, let me know. What's perception? Anybody? What is it? How you see things, absolutely. So when I first came in this morning, before you knew my story, what was your perception of me? I have thick skin, I can take it. What was your perception? Sharp dresser, that my wife is responsible for all that. So, honey, if you're watching, I love you. Okay. So, my wife, trust me, I give her all the credit, all right? Remember, she's the neck. Anyway, so, I don't want any trouble. So, okay. So, sharp dresser, I appreciate that, thank you. What else? Polish? Okay, polish, great. What else? Scholarly, fantastic. I was special ed, 9th grade high school dropout. Give me one more. Survivor, absolutely. But see, all of the perception was great, but when you learned my story, you understood that it wasn't always like that. It was a process. It's been years of people mentoring, years of people, sewing into me and helping me to be more than I ever thought that I could be. So perception is everything. So people say, well, you know what? You're a wildlife biology guy, right? I used to be a fish and wildlife technician. Now, I know some of you guys are like, yeah, right, sure you were. Okay, buddy. Yeah, well, I was. I worked for this organization called the Civilian Conservation Corps. And it was the CCC program for kids between 18 and 24. And I got involved in that program and did really well. And they shipped me out to California. And I lived in the mountains of Inyo Yosemite for 6 months, doing backcountry trail construction, metal restoration, environmental education. And you saw me at the top of that mountain. I was at the top of Mount Whitney, 14,377 feet. And clouds were hitting us in our face. It took us 2 weeks to get there. Anybody ever been to the top of Mount Whitney? No one. Okay, that's great. Okay. All right. Well, if you ever go at the top of Mount Whitney, there is a building that was built in 1908 by the Smithsonian. And by the time I got to the top of that mountain, when you saw me in that picture, when I turned around, I cried for a half an hour. Because I didn't understand how an inner city kid, abused 9th grade high school dropout, ends up on one of the highest mountains in the world. How did I do that? Because you told me that I could. And I remember when my father came home from work in 1977, he had just been downsized from his job for 30 years, right after the war. And my father had been downsized from his job, and we were then homeless and evicted from our home. And I remember the last day of school, Miss Ritchie said, you know what, son, you're going to be great someday. Remember everything that I've taught you. Always keep your chin up. You are significant. And I cried like a baby. And she hugged me, and I walked away. Never saw her for many, many years after that. And so through all of the pain and tribulation, the aspect of this whole thing called perception, well, I'm a data guy, because in wildlife, because I went to school and became a wildlife biology major, and it was the most incredible thing, because when I went to tour the school, it was by accident. I came back from California, and my camp manager said, son, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? I said, sir, I really don't know. I don't know what I want to do. He says, you have to do something. You want to go to college? I said, sir, I can't go to college. I'm a 9th grade high school dropout. I'm not very good at math. I don't really know. And he grabbed me by my shirt and closed his office door and threw me against the wall, and he said, don't you ever tell me what you can't do. You've beaten everything that's beaten you. You've raised through the ranks of this organization. What do you want to do with your life? And he let me go. Now I'm all wrinkled and shook up, But but he was my great mentor, and he always pushed me more than I ever thought I could be pushed. And I said, I don't know, I love this environmental stuff. He says, well, you want to go to school? I said, of course I want, but I can't pay, I don't have any money. He said, I didn't ask you if you had any money. I asked you, did you want to go? I said, yes, sir. He says, I tell you what, I'm going to send you to one of the greatest schools in the world. It's going to be great. So they send me down to this environmental school in the southeastern part of Ohio. Now, let me tell you something. During those days, I was an inner city kid. I had never been in the country. Now, the thing about it is, when we went down for the tour of the college, they sent me down during hunting season. Okay, let me say that one more time. They sent me down during hunting season. Now, at that time in my life, the only things I'd ever hunted were Easter eggs. That's all I've ever done. So we go down during hunting season, and you talk about a culture shock. I had never seen shotguns in pickup trucks. I had never seen that. If you got a gun in your car in the inner city, you may get shot. You know what I mean? So we're going down. All these people are in these bright colors. They got numbers on their back. I'm thinking they're escaped convicts. You know, I'm like, you know, where is there a prison around here? We're going down the road, and all of a sudden, this wild turkey goes across the road. I had never seen a bird that big. I was like, did you see the size of that robin? Did you see? What are they feeding that thing, man? And my friend's like, no, Mark, that's a wild turkey. Well, anyway, we go and we stop at this little store, and I walk in, and the music's a little different than what I'm used to. It had a little twang to it. And people kind of talk a little bit like this, and I'm scared to death, and so I go in there, right? And I'm looking around, and all the people are kind of talking like this, and as we came into the town, everybody's waving to everybody, and that's like really weird where I come from. And so I'm in there, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And now, have you guys ever seen the movie Sixth Sense by Bruce Willis? You ever seen that? Remember the scene where the kid says, I see dead people? Well, at that moment, I'm saying, I don't see any black people. So there's no black people in here, none. So I'm like, okay, let me get in here and let me get out. So I get my stuff, and I go behind the counter, and the guy behind the counter says, how do? And I'm like, what? So Wayne, he says, how do? And I'm thinking, how do you do what? What are you asking me, sir? So he looks at me and he says, young man. I said, yes, sir. He says, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. He said, I reckon. Now, I had never heard reckon in my life. Not wrecking like wrecking a car. I reckon you ain't from around these parts now, are you? And I said, no, sir, I'm not. He says, yeah. Now, I'd never heard, yeah. So he says, yeah, let me guess. He says, I bet you're a city boy, aren't you? I said, yes, sir, I am. He said, well, let me tell you something. I want to welcome you to the town of Nelsonville, Ohio. And let me tell you two things. When people speak to you, all you got to do is speak back. And if a guy says how do, just say how do back. And I was like, how do? So I'm how doing people, right? Now, understand, they're looking like, man, get this kid on it. Get on out here. So I get on the bus, and I go to the school, and it was crazy because somehow I get into the wrong profession. I wanted to get into, like, maybe firefighting or something, you know, but somehow I end up in the wildlife biology group. And so they take us to this room called taxidermy. Now, for those of you who hunt, taxidermy is when an animal dies and they stuff it. So I go into this room, and there's all these dead animals, like frozen like this. I mean, you know, there's all these heads on the wall. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, is that Bullwinkle? Bullwinkle, what have they done to you? And I'm scared to death. There's lion heads. I mean, like, who does that? Who puts a head on a stick? Where am I? So, you know, I'm going through, and, you know, we tour the college. I go home, and I tell my father, I said, Dad, I'm not going. Now, my uncle's there. Does anybody have someone in your family who is just kind of different? I mean, just kind of, you know, they come to the family reunions, and they're like, okay, here he comes, or here she comes, right? So my Uncle Dickie's like that, because my Uncle Dickie is like stuck in 72 because he's like a pimp that failed, you know what I mean? So he thinks he's a pimp, but he's not, and every family reunion, he comes and he wears these wild colors like apricot orange and Jiminy Cricket green, and he thinks he's a pimp. So he walks in, he's like, hey, young brother, let me talk to you for a minute. How you doing, young blood? What's that? Let me tell you something right now. That's how he talks. No lie. He says, He says, man, let me tell you something. He says, what you want to do, young brother, is you don't want to go down there, man, because we don't do this, man. We don't do this. I'm like, we don't do what? He says, we don't do that wildlife thing, man. That ain't what we do. He says, matter of fact, there's only one black man in the woods that I know, and that's Smokey the Bear. So when he says this, I'm like, you know what, Uncle Dickie, I love you, but I'm about to go get some potato salad. So I get away from him, and my father pulls me to the side, and my father says this. He says, look, he says, sometimes in life to go where you need to go, sometimes you need to go where you've never been. He said, you got to leave. Because at that time in my life, I'm in gangs. I've just been released from juvenile jail. I'm in trouble. And they put a hit on my life because we got into it with a rival gang. And I had some friends who were all killed in the car. I'm in this car, and my friend, the car gets shot up, and everybody in the car dies but me. And they put over 130 bullets out that car. How I didn't get hit, I have no idea. And things were hot in our neighborhood, and my dad says, you got to go. So I left. And I went to Hocking College with no education, but I went to Hocking College with a sense of hope. A sense that everything that Miss Ritchie and everything like people like you told me that I could do, I knew I had to win. I had to excel. And I went and I did very well, became an academic All-American, graduated with 3.2 GPA, got my GED, and came out and started doing positive things. But see, the perception of what we do sometimes is crucial. So how we think about where we take this organization to the next level is powerful. So here's what we're going to do. And maybe that's not going to work. Okay? Oh, maybe if I turn it on. Okay, so can somebody just advance that slide? I think, never mind, I got it. So here's what we're going to do. Let me do a little exercise here to kind of prove what I'm saying, because I'm a science guy. So we're going to do an exercise about how thought process really works and how when we think a certain way, things are great. So if I ask you guys what comes after 2, everybody would say 3. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to repeat the answer in unison. That screen and this rag that I'm holding, what color is it? What color? What color? Louder. 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 Now, in unison, what do cows drink? Kentucky, Nebraska, do cows drink milk where you are? Mark Anthony Garrett reporting live from Kansas City. Over 300 foster parents who are licensed to save kids' lives told me in unison that cows drink milk. Story 11. So, no. Cows don't drink milk, man. They don't. Now, someone says, but Mark, baby cows do. But understand, I'm a biologist. So a baby cow is not a cow. It is a? Yes, it is. So here's the question. How was I able to get intelligent, licensed, seasoned people who have our precious commodity to tell me in unison with great confidence that cows drink milk? How did I do that? Stuck on white. Yes. You were stuck on white. What else? So I got, you guys were so pumped up that everyone said, oh, I buy that. That's fine. Okay. So enthusiasm. You were focused on white. Here's the thing. It was what we call focus. See, whatever you focus on becomes your reality, be it positive or negative. So when I said cow, milk, associated, oh, man, but cows drink milk, but they really don't. They drink water. And the thing about it is, sometimes when people hear foster care, when they hear foster child, what do they think? Negative. Putridness, losers, people who can't succeed. And the thing about it is we have to be very careful what we focus on. So when we begin to look at what it is we do, we must focus on a greater sense of purpose and vision. The vision for KVC is to go and be number one, not just in America, but could you be number one in the world? Could you set a standard of service excellence in child welfare that says this is how we do it and this is why we do it, and the result of the evidence-based data will be the many children who come through who are better now than they were when they first came? Yes? That's what it's all about. So remember, it's focus. Well, people say, well, Mark, I don't really understand. I don't really believe that. Well, I can understand. So here we are. We operate in, many people operate in what we call a cube, right? Huh? So inside the box, outside the box. What do you think we need to focus on? Should we be inside the box or outside the box? We got to be outside the box, absolutely. But sometimes, because of policies and procedures, we also have to be inside the box. So I'm going to come off the stage. I'm just going to do this for illustration, okay? So when you, I guess my pointer's not working. Oop, you're not, okay. So you guys see right here? See that square right there? So whether it's on the left or right, I want you to focus directly in the center of that. And if you focus directly in the center of that, the box will shift. When it shifts for you, just raise your hand. There it goes. Pop, 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 like popcorn. It's shifting. It's shifting. Look directly into that first square, shifting. It goes back, it shifts, it goes back, it shifts, it goes back, it shifts. Now, here's the question. Why didn't the box shift before? Because for many of you, the box didn't shift until I told you that it could. See, we can't dispute science. And many kids who are operating in this box of I'm just a foster kid or I'm just a foster parent, you know what? When we tell them, when we demonstrate that life can shift for them, guess what? It will shift for them, and sometimes it takes time. For some of you, you're like, that thing ain't shift for me. I mean, I know, it takes a while. But here's the thing. What if it doesn't shift for you? Then what? Then why don't you go ahead and remove the box completely and paint your own Picasso? Remove the box. Who says we can't remove the box and create our own reality? Because for a young black inner city kid to become a wildlife biologist and chase Bambi through the woods is not probable. It's not. It just isn't. I never thought in a million years that I would be able to teach dendrology, the study of trees, ichthyology and entomology and ornithology. I never thought that I could develop wildlife management plans and understand about habitats and understand what the difference between a red oak and a white oak is. I never understood that I can go and work at deer check-in stations and check a deer's age by its teeth. I never knew I could do that. I never knew that I could do a lot of different things that I've done until somebody told me that I could. What it is that you guys do is phenomenal. You guys are significant. You guys are amazing. But here's the thing. Not only can we do this for our children, but what can we do for ourselves? Because as I said before, leaders or readers, great people look at new ways of being able to step outside the box and influence not only the children around them, but themselves. Because you cannot give what you don't have. So I always challenge you to be better. Read better books. Surround yourself with greater acting people and greater thinking people. Expand your consciousness. And here's a term that I phrase that I call it satellite thinking. Many people say, well, I want to fly with the eagles. Why fly with the eagles when we can be a satellite? Because when you're a satellite, you're in a different orbit. You're in a different stratosphere. And this is what KVC does, is I begin to think about all the stuff you said last night and all the people I've interacted with. You guys are out-of-the-box thinkers. You guys have totally removed the box and replaced it with your own Picasso, and that is amazing. That is what makes you guys so great. That is what makes you guys so significant. But then when we begin to look, people say, well, Mark, you know what? It doesn't make sense. It's all a matter of focus. So when we look at this, all I want you to do is to count the number of F's you see. Don't talk to your friend or don't talk to your neighbor. Just count the number of F's you see. There's only a couple up there anyway. So just count the number of F's you see. How many F's do you see? Take a moment. Be very silent. Okay. All right. So how many people only saw 2 F's? Okay, nobody saw 2? Okay. How many people? Okay, one person saw 2. All right. How many people saw 3? Okay, great. So no 2s, we saw 3s. How many people saw 4? Okay, so we didn't see 2s, but we saw 3 and 4. How many people saw 5? Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so some people, okay, so my 2s again, 2s, 3s, okay, down, 4s, okay, 5s, okay. Did anybody see 6? Well, wait, hold on. We don't have an open bar here. I don't think, wait a minute. So, you guys are telling me there's 3, you saw 4, 5, Bob, 6, who saw 7? Okay, all right, something is very awry here. Okay, so, all right, so let me ask you this. Who's right? Who said I am? Okay, so everybody thinks so 3s, where you at? 3s? Okay, 3s. Okay, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I mean, we're doing auction up here. So everyone thinks they're right, but who has the correct answer? 4s. The 4s do. Man, what is your name? Felicia Taylor. Felicia, come up here for a second. Come on up. Girl, get up here. Felicia, come on up. Felicia, you saw 4, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you see 4?
Because I read it and saw 4.
Okay, so are you convinced that what you saw is accurate?
Yes.
Okay. What are you willing to wager on it? How the tide changes. This is all make-believe.
My foster kids? No.